Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's Facebook Live on PPP loan forgiveness. And Sutton is very excited to share with you guys about the easy form, but
That's
we're
right. So
also
many good
excited,
things.
so many good things. We also have with us today Mark Winchester, who is the Deputy District Director for Houston with the U.S. Small Business Administration. So Sutton, I'll hand it over to you to introduce
Yeah.
Mark today.
Yeah. Well, I just thanks for everybody joining today. And Mark Winchester is part of the team in Houston, Texas, that has been doing a yeoman's job of communicating out many times, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week on different webinars that Renee and I have watched over these last 90, or gosh, it's 90 days, it seems like. So it's been amazing. So the opportunity for us to bring him in and to ask him a couple of questions. Mark, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being a part. Thank you for all your service. Thank you for serving our country, not only in your job, but also as a soldier. So thanks for joining us today.
I just have to say thank you, son, for this invitation to SBA, to Mr. Tim Jeffcoat, and the staff, and I'm glad to be here today. Thank you very much.
You bet. Well, there's a 4 main questions that I wanted to hit with you today. The first and foremost is to make sure that everyone is aware of the application being able to still apply for PPP and that it's still open. And so if you could just kind of clarify that from a standpoint of the PPP and where we are as far as continuing to fund loans,
sure,
new loans.
Sure, son. And that's really a great question. I want to share with you and your audience that SBA really, in response to COVID-19, has 2 loan programs. It has the Paycheck Protection Program, and the Paycheck Protection Program is administered by lenders, local lenders that offer the SBA loan guarantee and who are also offering the PPP loan. Secondly, I want to share with your members or those who are on this Zoom cast that SBA also has the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And the Economic Injury Disaster Loan program is a loan program directly from SBA. And, Sutton, I'll get questions. They'll say, who is ODA? And so we have departments within SBA. We have international trade, innovation and investments. Well, we have another department called the Office of Disaster Assistance. So the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, in response to COVID-19, we have a direct loan, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, that is administered by the Office of Disaster Assistance. I just wanted to make that clear that there are 2 loan programs. And to your question, Sutton, regarding the Paycheck Protection Program, you make a very good point. The deadline, the current deadline for all SBA loan guarantees is June 30th. And Sutton, I would say, as my boss would say, Mr. Tim Jeffcoat, the district director, you really have a deadline of June 20th, which is in 2 days, to really submit your application. Why? Because you need to provide enough runway, enough time period for the lenders to do their underwriting, to get your application, to get the supporting documents, to make a decision. And so the June 30th is really not the deadline to submit the application, but the deadline to get the note authorization from SBA for that PPP application. And to Sutton's point, and it's a very good point too, that in addition to PPP, which is a loan guarantee program, 100% loan guarantee program from SBA, that the SBA 7A program, our regional administrator, his name is Justin Crossy. I believe, Sutton, you may have been introduced to Justin.
Absolutely.
Or at least via email correspondence. He refers to it, Sutton, as legacy. SBA's legacy loan guarantee programs are our 7A program, and 7A is the umbrella for our 7A, 504, Express. And so the deadline for all of SBA's loan guarantee penalty currently to obtain a note authorization is June 30th.
That's awesome. Well, let's dive into a little bit of the relationship between a EIDL loan, so EIDL loan, the $10,000 advance, which was it could be less than that, but the $10,000 advance, is it a loan? Is it a grant? And how it participates with the PPP. There's a lot of questions that Renee and I get on should let's say somebody got $10,000 and let's call it an advance. They got a $10,000 advance. Should they subtract that from their PPP loan amount? How do those two things work together?
So Sutton, that's a great question. And so what it is I just shared a moment ago that SBA provides two loan programs. One is a loan guarantee program. The other one is a disaster loan. And economic injury disaster loan is a loan program through ODA. And Sutton, technically speaking, if you were to read the CARES Act, it's interesting. The CARES Act actually refers to the EIDL advance as a grant. So I know it's an oxymoron. You're applying for an EIDL loan, but embedded in the EIDL loan is an opportunity to apply for what the CARES Act essentially calls a grant. And so to your point or to your question, the EIDL advance is a grant, and you're correct. The calculation for the EIDL grant, it is $1,000 per employee up to 10 employees up to $10,000. So I think I answered your first question. And then a follow-up to that question, I believe you asked, well, the relationship of EIDL advance in relation to PPP, is that correct?
Yes, sir. And really, like, do they reduce it? Do they reduce the PPP loan amount? Is it on top of the PPP? Let's say that somebody got a $100,000 PPP loan amount that was 2.5 months worth of their average payroll from last year. So they got $100,000. They also got a $10,000 advance. So total together, there was $100,000 plus a $10,000, so $110,000. And so they're trying to figure out how those two dollar amounts work. So I hope that kind of simplifies the question.
No, it does, Sutton. And you're asking great questions. And so so I need to be clear here. And I just want to add just some minute details or anecdotal information regarding the EIDL advance. So if an individual applies for the EIDL loan, they elect for the EIDL advance, they can get the EIDL advance even if they're declined on the EIDL loan. They also, if they apply for the EIDL loan and the EIDL advance, they get the EIDL advance. Let's say they're approved for the EIDL loan. And let's say they decide, you know what? I don't want the EIDL loan. Guess what? They can still keep the EIDL advance. And so just wanted to provide some additional commentary or anecdotal information regarding the EIDL advance. Now, in regards to the EIDL advance and the PPP, Sutton is correct. So what it is let's give the scenario. Let's say you apply for the EIDL loan, you get the EIDL advance, you apply for the PPP, and Sutton is correct. You need to list, it is required on the PPP application that you list the dollar amount of the EIDL advance and actually the EIDL loan number. And Sutton is correct. What happens is the PPP, somewhat similar to the EIDL with the EIDL grant. The PPP, you have an opportunity for loan forgiveness. And what it is if you, with the PPP flexibility June 5th legislation, the ratios for payroll and non-payroll costs are a percentage of 60-40. And so if during your covered period, you incur these costs of a minimum threshold of 60% payroll, 40% non-payroll, and you submit that request to your PPP lender that you want loan forgiveness, whatever that dollar amount is, whatever that dollar amount for loan forgiveness, the EIDL advance will be deducted from the loan forgiveness. And
Okay.
so that's the relationship of the EIDL advance to the PPP, Sutton, is that if an individual gets the EIDL advance, they get the PPP, they need to let their PPP lender know that they got the EIDL advance, that they have that EIDL loan number, the dollar amount of the EIDL advance, and if they apply for loan forgiveness, whatever that amount is, the EIDL advance will be deducted from that loan forgiveness amount.
That's great. That's super helpful. Renee, does that make sense? All right. Just want to make sure. All right. So Mark, two more questions and we'll let you go. The other question that we get all the time is whether we are using an 8-week covered period or a 24-week covered period. People ask the question, do the payroll or non-payroll expenses, do they need to be incurred and paid within the 8-week or the 24-week?
You know, it's a great question. Well, let me first, Sutton, you do a good job of asking multi-layered questions. And so let me first address the 8 weeks versus the 24 weeks. And I just want to pull up, I have a summary of the PPP flexibility. And first, what I'd like to address, Sutton, is regarding the 8 weeks versus 24 weeks. So one of the impacts, one of the items, if you will, that was revised by the PPP flexibility legislation was that the PPP flexibility legislation extended the cover period. And for your audience, the covered period is the date that they receive full disbursement of the loan, and it's that period that they're going to incur costs that they will then ask the bank for loan forgiveness. And so, first of all, I want to let you know that the PPP flexibility HR 7010 extended the covered period from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. And I will clarify, Justin, that the period can be no later than December 31st, 2020, just for additional clarification. The other anecdotal information or a bit of information that I'd like to provide to you, Sutton, in regards to 8 week and 24 weeks, is that for existing PPP borrowers, these would be borrowers that had a PPP loan prior to June 5th, they may elect to keep the 8 week versus the 24 week. And I'll share something with your members. Have a relationship with your lender. Communicate with your lender. Let your lender know, especially if you were a PPP borrower prior to June 5th, let that lender know whether you want to elect for the 8 week period or the 24 week period. Now, the second part of your question, which is an excellent question, and we do get asked this, and if it's okay, something, I'm going to share the screen.
Super,
and,
be great.
Okay, and let me know if you can see this. It's actually in our PowerPoint, and let me know if you can see this.
Yep,
this is a summary of eligible cost, and it gets to Sutton's point. Now, I'm going to read this and then I'm going to share an update. So, payroll costs paid and payroll costs incurred during the 8 week period. That was the original period for the covered period was 8 weeks. And as I just shared a moment ago, is now, and Sutton shared also, it is now, because of the new legislation, 24 weeks. Payroll costs are considered paid on the day that paychecks are distributed or the borrower originates an ACH credit transaction. Payroll costs are considered incurred on the day that the employee's pay is earned. Payroll costs incurred but not paid during the borrower's last pay period of the covered period are eligible for forgiveness if paid on or before the next regular payroll date. Otherwise, payroll costs must be paid during the covered period. Otherwise, payroll costs must be paid during the covered period. Okay, for each individual employee, the total amount of cash compensation eligible for forgiveness may not exceed an annual salary of $100,000 as prorated. Something we get asked regarding this, the 100,000 not exceed. How do you determine that during the covered period? So it's going to be prorated during that covered period, and consequently, if it's going to be 24 weeks, then it's going to be that 100,000 over a 24-week period versus an 8-week period. Count payroll costs that were both, and this is to your point, Sutton, count payroll costs that were both paid and incurred only once. And really, they need to be paid and incurred during that covered period with that one exception. Does that answer your question?
Oh, absolutely. You nailed it, Mark. And okay, last question, and then we're going to let you go. The question is, when we get to the so we're still looking at your screen, Mark.
Yes.
Okay. So the last question is on the EZ form. Love saying that word because it is easy. There's a section that talks about the organization, their inability to return to February business activity as before February 15th, 2020. And that's due to compliance of either Health and Human Services, OSHA, or CDC guidelines. And so most of the folks that that are on this Facebook Live are churches, and a lot of them were faced with shutdowns because of CDC guidelines. And so this is going to be a very pertinent decision if they're able to use the EZ form, if they're able to check that and say, yes, we had to follow guidelines, and we have not been able to return back to February 15th, 2020 levels.
And give me 1 second here.
Yes, sir. And just for everybody listening, we're going to, after Mark leaves us, we're going to go through in detail the EZ form. And we're also going to talk about Renee's spreadsheet and the updates that we have done to that to help you. So stay tuned as we're going to use all 60 minutes. Go ahead, Mark.
So first, what I'd like to do, Sutton, is what you're referencing was also included in the PPP flexibility. And I want to read that. And then I want to go back to the EZ application. Is that all right?
That sounds great. Let's do it.
Okay.
Because I think this is going to be a huge, important factor that a lot of people that are listening today really want to be clear on.
Okay. So and I'm glad we're highlighting some of the important items on the summary of the PPP flexibility. One thing that I wanted to share, Sutton, is the safe harbor. We, as you and I think, Sutton, you mentioned that Holly, and maybe Renee too. Y'all have been on our webinars. We've talked about safe harbor, and we've talked about how safe harbor is June 30th. One of the other items that was impacted was that the fact that the safe harbor was extended to December 31st. And another thing that we talk about, Sutton, is, and I like to be precise, full-time equivalency exception. Full-time equivalency exception. The original loan forgiveness guidelines talked about worksheet. And if you recall, Sutton, in the worksheet of the original PPP loan forgiveness, there was a line for full-time equivalency exception. And so what you're referring to now in the EZ is referenced regarding that exception. And I just want to comment on what the PPP flexibility provided some additional detail regarding that. And I just want to read this here, and I think it's applicable. But then after that, I'd like to transition to the actual application so I can see exactly what and where you're referencing. So here it is. The forgivable amount must be determined without regard to a reduction in the number of employees. So, you know, I used to be a paralegal, and there can be some legalese. And really what that's saying is, if you want to be in a position where you don't have to account for this reduction for the following reasons, here they are. And so here they are. One, unable to rehire former employees and is unable to hire similarly qualified employees. Or two, unable to, and this gets to your point, Sutton, unable to return to the same level of business activity due to compliance with federal requirements, which could include OSHA, which include, I think you mentioned Health and Human Services, is that correct?
Yes, it's
yeah.
Health and Human Services,
Correct.
CDC, OSHA. And
yep.
OSHA.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Yep. So this reference of federal requirements refers to what you were referencing in more detail, and I really do appreciate that. So on the second point is unable to return to the same level of business activity due to the compliance with federal requirements or guidance related to COVID-19. So what that is saying, Sutton, and I know you know this, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but what it's saying,
preach on, come on.
Thank you, Sutton. And that is the forgivable amount must be determined without regard to the reduction. So these items can impact you in which you do not have to account for that full-time equivalency. We call it full-time equivalency exception. Now, what I'd like to do, Sutton, is look specifically at that easy form, and I have it up, and I'm going to share the screen, and perhaps you can help me.
I got you right there. So right here at the borrower is unable to operate right here.
Yes.
At this.
Oh, you're faster on the draw.
There we go. Hey, I love these documents, especially easy form.
Faster on the draw, man.
That's right.
Okay, so it's that second to last paragraph or last?
Yes, sir. It's that last checkbox right here.
Oh, the last one. Okay, let me read that. Here. Yeah. So in addition, the authorized representative of the borrower must certify by initialing at least one of the following two items. And you know what? Okay, let's read this. And Sutton, if you permit me, I'd like to read that press release. Okay. Sure. Let's read this paragraph. And you're correct. This is actually a benefit, and it actually what it means, Sutton, is if they meet this requirement, then they're eligible to utilize the easy form. And I think if I read the press release to you or news release, it will make sense. But let's read this. The borrower, give me 1 second. And Sutton, I'll share this. So I was born in Boston, 14 years in Connecticut because of the Navy. I would say over 25, 27 years here in Texas. So my dialect, if you want to call it that, is a combination of Northeast and Texan. And when I say borrower like I'm.
That's good.
So
I love it. I love it. I'm just glad that you got here. It didn't matter when you got here. It's just you finally got to Texas. That's the important thing.
So I apologize for my Texas drawl there when I say borrower, but give me 1 second. So the borrower was unable to operate between February 15, 2020 and the end of the covered period at the same level of business activity as before February 15th, 2020, due to compliance with requirements established or guidance issued between March 1st, 2020 and December 31st, 2020 by, and you mentioned this, Secretary of Health, Human Services, Director of Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or the Occupational Safety and Health Administration related to the maintenance of standards of sanitation, social distancing, or any other work or customer safety requirement related to COVID-19. So what I would say to your question, son, is that to be eligible for the EZ form is either one, and I like to be precise, son. Give me one second.
Sir. Okay, you need to
Here
share
it
your
is.
screen.
And you know what? If you'll permit me, I'd like to share the screen. Thank you.
Got it.
I'm
Go
going to
for
share
it.
the screen on the press or news release, and you'll see it here. So what that EZ form is saying is right here in the middle. To be eligible for the EZ form, you either need to be self-employed and have no employees, or the one of two categories that we've just read. Does that make sense? Did
Absolutely.
not reduce. So that, to your question, that they're wanting the applicant to either be self-employed and have no employees or meet one of these categories. And to your point, the second one is their experience reduction in business activity as a result of health directives related to COVID-19 and did not reduce the salary or wages of their employee by more than 25%. So
that's awesome.
That's it. I hope I answered your question, son.
You sure did. And Mark, I really do appreciate you joining us today and taking the time. I know 30 minutes is a lot of time for you to allot. So there's pastors and leaders of nonprofits and leaders of Christian schools that are watching right now, and I'm sure they're applauding you and saying thank you for joining us and taking a part of what we're doing here. We're serving lots of people. So thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
I've just got to say thank you to you, to Holly, Renee. Thank you for the work that you're doing, guiding pastors and nonprofits. I will share this. I think I shared this before we came on. My dad was a B-52 pilot and base commander, made a career out of the Air Force, but then he became a Christian and became a pastor. And so
awesome.
I have I have a heart for pastors. So thank you.
Thank you.
What you're doing. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Have a great day.
God bless you all. Take care.
God bless you too.
You too, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark.
All right, bye-bye.